Hi, welcome to whatever this is.
Bo Burnham's Inside is a true hybrid. It has the 90-minute running time of a movie, the visual feel of a Beyoncé-esque visual album, the intimacy of a theatrical performance, and the general framework of a stand-up comedy special, with the signature style of joke songs Burnham's comedy is known for.
A white woman's Instagram.
This mix of styles and forms is appropriate because the special is an exploration of convergence, the way that once separated forms of mass media have come together onto unified platforms because of the internet.
Welcome to the internet.
Audiences used to experience TV shows on television sets, movies on big screens, music through stereos. But now the internet has placed all of these different forms of media onto devices like laptops or phones that can give you, as Burnham put it, a little bit of everything all the time.
Could I interest you in everything all of the time?
Inside asks us how this relatively new way of consuming media has affected our mental state, particularly during the COVID pandemic, when convergence has met with mass isolation and uncertainty. So let's go through the major themes of Inside and how it explores what convergence is doing to our collective mental health.
Maybe the flattening of the entire subjective human experience. Maybe that's not good.
If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified about all of our new videos. The process of creating art for today's moment is front and center in Inside. In the opening song Content, Burnham describes the converged nature of digital content as a generic treat that may not match the artist's mood or intentions, or actually speak to the deeper experiences of the moment. With the lyrics, "Daddy made you your favorite" open wide, he implies that the relationship between artist and audience has been forced to become patronizing, treating people who receive his art like children being fed a sugary, perhaps not very nutritious snack. Burnham's implied disdain for the idea of content echoes Martin Scorsese, who recently wrote for Harper's that the art of cinema is being systematically devalued, sidelined, demeaned, and reduced to its lowest common denominator, content.
There's a more insidious threat, and that's the devaluation of cinema itself. It can all be summed up in the word that's being used now, content.
The gap between an artist's reluctance and a corporation's eagerness toward the converging of art and content is conveyed in the song's jarring juxtaposition of a synthy, ebullient song with depressive lyrics
Robert's been a little depressed.
and a long, dark shot where the camera pulls away, suggesting a bleaker, more distanced mood than that of the upbeat music. The lyrics of Content mostly refer to being locked inside during 2020, drawing a connection between unprecedented levels of streaming as the pandemic hit and changes in how we're engaging with content, increasingly from a distance rather than actively keying into specific works of art. The feeling that his work could turn into an insignificant junk food treat seems to add to the personal depression Burnham's character is experiencing. Self-conscious of making this special as content for Netflix, Burnham is imagining how it will be pushed out for people at home to binge, along with whatever's next in their queue. He later worries in Don't Wanna Know if viewers might just be casually putting his work on in the background. Later in the special, the creepy circus-feeling Welcome to the Internet expresses the experiential downside of convergence through its little bit of everything all of the time refrain. The boundless options of the internet all jumbled together, instantly accessible, serve to flatten cultural experiences or curiosities into unsatisfying clusters of endless content.
We've got mountains of content.
Burnham is asking, when the internet is the primary way we take in movies, TV, comedy, music, or whatever else, what does all of this ultimately do to our state of mind? The question of how to make or consume all this content ethically hangs over the pair of short songs about Amazon founder Jeff Bezos.
CEO entrepreneur, born in 1964.
Amazon is also one of today's primary examples of convergence. They sell music, movies, TV shows, and books in all kinds of formats, with their own music app and a streaming video service that both creates and licenses content, putting as much material as possible in one digital space.
Zuckerberg and Gates and Buffett, amateurs can f***ing suck it.
There's an extra layer of irony that Burnham is working for Netflix, one of Amazon's major rivals in streaming content. When Burnham mockingly congratulates Bezos in the song, he's imitating the tone of press coverage over Silicon Valley miracles, fawning over powerful companies for bringing such convenience into our lives, with the implicit question of whether we've collectively let those billionaires and their big tech go way too far. When Burnham cries, "You did it, congratulations!" we're invited to ask, what exactly is it that Bezos has done for or to the world? That question is taken further and made more personal when the first Bezos song is followed by Sexting, which moves abruptly from despair to, well, horniness. It's a song that shows how feelings of confusion and hopelessness in a new digital world can inspire us to seek digital connections to ease our loneliness, even outside of a global pandemic. Burnham doesn't explicitly say that this is how and why digital conglomerates have so much control over us, but it's implied. Bezos and other tech moguls profit out of this world in which each of us is stuck in our own rooms and seeking a form of connection that's the next best thing to sex and/or in-person relationships. Next, in Look Who's Inside Again, when Burnham sings about trying to be funny while stuck in a room, he's drawing a link between his own loneliness and what a billionaire mogul might call content creation. FaceTime with My Mom also uses its music's club feel
I'ma FaceTime with my mom tonight.
to contrast with lyrics about how absurd and unsatisfying technologically enabled connections like video chat can sometimes feel.
My mother's covering her camera with her thumb.
Meanwhile, in White Woman's Instagram, one of the special's more traditionally satirical songs about women posting visual and philosophical cliches online, Burnham is able to convincingly recreate many familiar social media images alone in a single room, providing just how generic and canned those moments can be. Making fun of women on Instagram is not exactly the freshest material. There's something a little cheap about the way that the phrase white women lends the illusion of trenchant racial commentary to what's really mostly rehashing 2010-era jokes about women of a certain age and social class being basic because they like stuff everyone else likes.
I can't believe we ignored the signs, all the Zoom book classes, the inspirational quote in my email signature.
But then there's a mid-song breakdown with a long pretend caption about genuine familial loss.
Mama, I miss you.
An interesting moment where real life converges with our personal content creation. While on one level, Burnham may still be making fun of people who overshare on social media, he's also trying to find the moment when more genuine humanity emerges from all of the curated, picture-perfect image-making. In Comedy, another song about whatever it is that Burnham is making, Burnham jokes about the issue of appropriateness for his profession in dark times, with the self-referential refrain of, "Should I be joking at a time like this?" And lines like healing the world with comedy, and if you wake up in a house that's full of smoke, don't panic, call me and I'll tell you a joke. The unspoken punchline is that his job is both pretentious and pretty insignificant in the scheme of things. It's an awareness that dovetails with the despair underneath content. One of the main visual cues of the video is Burnham using a button on his keyboard to give himself a laugh track, emphasizing the essential fakeness of comedy and how jarring it can seem amidst profoundly unfunny global events. The other focus of comedy is that Burnham is a well-paid, popular white guy making fun of his status as a well-paid, popular white guy,
I'm white and I'm here to save the day.
while being honest that he and others like him aren't really willing to do much to disrupt the status quo that benefits them.
Should I give away my money? No.
How the World Works, a mock educational song featuring child-friendly sock puppet character Sako, underlines the emptiness of many calls for change from people in power. Sako observes that the narrative we teach our children in every history class is demonstrably false and pedagogically classist, because the actual world is built with blood.
And genocide and exploitation.
Burnham plays both himself and Sako, dramatizing a tension within one's own self between actually caring about addressing the world's ills, like Sako, and wanting to simply appease a liberal, socially conscious audience without actually inciting change, like this version of himself.
Remember who's on whose hand here.
He wraps up by showing the self who's invested in the status quo brutally imposing his power over Sako, underlining that, in the end, many elite liberals don't really desire the radical social change they pay lip service to.
Are you gonna behave yourself? Yes.
Problematic and 30 engage with Burnham's personal and professional relationship to both woke culture and changing values. Problematic reveals an ambivalence toward PC culture, which Burnham has largely described as a good thing, though sometimes taken too far.
I think the pendulum has swung the other way, a little too far, but it's a good direction.
The song's Christ imagery seems to be making fun of people on both sides of PC culture. Most centrally, he's mocking self-pitying celebrities who feel crucified or martyred upon receiving criticism. The song spoofs the performativity of celebrities' repentant awareness, which can feel routine and manufactured. Just another part of the fame cycle.
I've done a lot of self-reflecting since I started singing this song.
But the silliness of exclamations like "he's a problem" and the sexy lyric of "my bed is empty and I'm getting cold, isn't anybody gonna hold me accountable?" also laugh at a culture that does sometimes take this whole process a little too seriously.
Political correctness with young people, for me it's an overcorrection, but I'll take like an irony-deaf, tolerant crowd over a racist crowd that really understands the workings of comedy.
Problematic almost presents Burnham's own aging and his culture's evolution as one thing in the line, "Times are changing and I'm getting old." He looks back at his roots of getting famous for comedy YouTube videos as a teen and admits to making some dumb jokes at the time that he's not proud of.
I wrote offensive shit and I said it.
It's embarrassing. Some of them are embarrassing. Some of them are, you know, 2006, 16-year-old trying to be edgy. It's kind of, it's a little homophobic. It's literally racially insensitive.
Problematic has moments that seem to genuinely reflect on how some of his past choices were totally awful due to not being very thoughtful. But 30 mourns for that same time period, lamenting that he's no longer the boy wonder known as the young one.
Now I'm turning 30. No.
Together, Problematic and 30 form a paradox. Burnham wants to outgrow and mature beyond whatever mistakes he made in his youth, but he's anxious and reluctant to actually age.
I wanted to finish this thing before I turned 30.
The problem is you can't have one form of growth without the other. TV shows and movies didn't always have comment sections and social media share buttons directly adjoined to the place where so many people watch them. When personal communication and mass communication converge into a single location, audience feedback suddenly comes more accessible and inescapable.
You can't not read the comments. Like, even if you don't click comments and read them, it's like they're there. Yeah. They're gonna show up. You're gonna see something. It's gotten a little out of hand now where it's like it's all over the place and there's like hate accounts.
Inside conveys how this can make artists feel trapped in a room with endless echoes and hellish levels of commentary and feedback. In the mock request for feedback, Don't Wanna Know, Burnham voices all the questions the artist wonders about the audience's reactions.
Are you finding it boring?
But how ultimately he'd rather not hear them.
Never mind, I don't wanna know.
In Unpaid Intern, Burnham starts with a pretty typical satirical song that could easily have come out in the mid-2010s, observing the ridiculously exploitative conditions involved with interning.
The coffee is free, just like me.
But he adds layers of self-doubt, self-analysis, and self-loathing by making a series of reaction videos to his own videos in a loop of self-analysis.
Now I'm deciding to react to the reaction to the video.
It's reminiscent of the techniques used by director Michel Gondry in some of his music videos of the 90s and 2000s, like the one for Bjork's Bachelorette or the writing and directing of Gondry's sometime collaborator Charlie Kaufman, whose characters inhabit mirror realities in Synecdoche, New York, and get stuck in their own heads in adaptation.
So, what is the substance of writing?
I have failed. I am panicked. First, I have sold out. I am worthless.
Last,
what the f am I doing here?
But here Burnham is taking those techniques to make a point about how the democratic DIY nature of internet commentary can very quickly turn into a cacophony of voices, even if all the voices actually belong to the artist, drowning himself out with self-directed criticism to anticipate the feedback of others.
I'm so worried that criticism will be leveled against me that I levy it against myself before anyone else can.
There's an overriding sense of isolation throughout Inside that informs nearly every song and segment. Pulling off this production while physically isolated during the pandemic, Burnham recreates certain visual aspects of music video parody in a room alone with impressive ingenuity. But he jolts us out of segments that vaguely resemble a normal performance with lighting and props and set design through segments that show the seams of this production, even framing himself with a bunch of wires and equipment. The mix of artifice and intimacy is inherent not just to this special but almost to all of today's content, which lives on platforms like TikTok and YouTube, where it's a plus for videos to feel authentic and spontaneous, while in fact much planning, writing, and budgeting has to go into the most successful productions. Here though, personal isolation is really the subject. Whereas in the past, Burnham has done a lot of genre parody, like his satire of pandering country songs.
And they list the same words and phrases off sort of Mad Lib style in every song.
Here he's parodying his mental health problems. Songs like Shit and All Time Low again use dance-ready, upbeat melodies to communicate depression and anxiety.
Feeling like a saggy, massive sack of shit.
With a result that's simultaneously uncomfortable and cathartic, as demoralizing as it is uplifting. The final songs in the special take the isolation aesthetic to its most personal extremes. All Eyes on Me hides Burnham further behind all of his lights and equipment, the camera shooting him at a distance as he discusses the panic attacks that kept him from performing live for years.
I thought I should start performing again, and then the funniest thing happened.
Then the camera goes in uncomfortably close for handheld shots, literally held by the subject, Burnham himself, before the song cuts off abruptly. Which has been a running sort of punchline throughout the special, as if his material is being curtailed by some combination of self-loathing and the need to keep all of his content snackable and bite-sized.
I'd give away the ending, but you don't wanna know. What's up, boys?
Fusing more distance shots with the uncomfortably close shots make it clear that he both is getting intensely personal.
I turned 30 in less than a minute,
while repeatedly making the audience aware of his status as a performer.
Are you feeling nervous? Are you having fun?
Earlier in Look Who's Inside Again, he sings about feeling again like the kid who was stuck in his room and who tried to make connections in the outer world through his comedy. He's drawing out the irony that, thanks to the pandemic, he's back to filming himself making jokes in a room by himself. But as the special progresses, he's sending the message that it's not just the pandemic, but the greater trajectory of today's convergence that may be condemning both comedians and the rest of us to feeling mentally stuck inside our own rooms for much, much longer. As Inside comes to a close, the song Goodbye revisits and mixes together many of the special's themes and refrains. Does anybody want a joke when no one's laughing in the background, he asks, calling attention again to the lack of an audience and recalling the image of him hitting the laughter button on his keyboard, as well as the piped-in laugh track that kicks off All Eyes on Me. Goodbye ends on an image of Burnham nude, but in a spotlight. Again, the obviously artificial trappings of show business are joined with him looking and feeling exposed, this time literally. In the final sequence of the special, Burnham leaves his room and re-enters the world, only to wind up on a soundstage, then turning around to pound at the fake door, desperate to re-enter his home, while the fake laugh track returns and plays over the image of his distress. Burnham himself becomes the audience, at first looking uncomfortable, but eventually laughing too at his other self's anguish. As the credits sing us out with the line, "It'll stop any day now," the cheerfulness of the lyrics feels sinister, as if the only way for all this suffering we're all experiencing to end is eventual death.
And I think I'm gonna die.
Even though the pandemic is seemingly ending for some people and returning to the world may be a more viable option with the availability of vaccines, the converged world of digital content still leaves us not only feeling trapped in our own homes and psyches, but sometimes actively longing for that isolation, even when it's not especially healthy. When personal strife, serious art, and spoofy comedy are all happening in the same place, escape from ourselves may not be possible.
Well, look who's inside again.
This is The Take on your favorite movie, shows, and culture.
Thank you so much for watching and for supporting us.
Please subscribe and never miss a take.